Again, this is Annie Weinberg, the Electoral Director with Democracy for America. We are here and we're about to kick off this training on building a people-powered campaign, grassroots recruitment, and developing leaders. We're going to give folks just about 90 more seconds to jump on to make sure everyone's here. I'm joined by Alejandro Chavez here. Wave hi, Alejandro. There you go. We also have Brianna Fisher from Democracy for America's communications team. We got Mary Shimmer, our organizing director. We got Mondell Robinson here, who's leading our state legislative strategy. And we're going to kick it off very soon as we give folks just a few more moments to jump on. But it is an honor and a privilege to get to work with all of you. And if you are here and jumping on the phone for Democracy for America's night school about building the political revolution through a people-powered campaign focusing on grassroots recruitment and leadership, then you are definitely in the right place. All right, y'all. It's 9:01. Folks are still piling on from all over the country, and it is truly inspiring, but I think it is time to start this party. So welcome, everybody. It is an honor to be here with all of you. My name is Annie Weinberg. I'm the Electoral Director at Democracy for America. We are a people-powered PAC with 1.2 million members around the country. We were founded, as I think most of you know, in 2004 by Governor Howard Dean, and we're all about building grassroots people-powered political organizing. So we've won over 836 elections to help get progressives to office up and down the ballot in all 50 states. Our 1.2 million members are dedicated to fighting income inequality, to ending structural racism, and to building a more reflective democracy by electing people-powered, values-driven leaders like yourselves up and down the ballot in all 50 states. This night school is a program we've been doing for a while. It is a virtual and free and interactive program designed to build up these skills so that we can continue growing and winning elections all over the country. A couple things to expect before we dig in. We're going to be asking you some questions, and you can raise your hand and use the numbers on your pin pad on your phone to answer those questions. At different points throughout the call, we're also going to be breaking out into smaller groups virtually on your phone, so you can actually introduce yourselves to each other and dig in with your fellow trainees on the skills that we're describing in these calls, because we don't want to be a lecture series. The best way to dig into some of these things is to actually practice them and talk with each other. And these night schools are also growing. We're going to be sending out a debrief survey after this for some key takeaways and some next steps that you can do to put these skills that we're talking about right now into action in your communities so that we can keep this movement going. And again, these trainings are happening every Wednesday night throughout the month of August, including September 7th. And on August 24th, we'll be joining the Our Revolution kickoff call. So that August 24th training is going to be on Thursday. All right, I'm going to dig into the agenda in just a moment. But before I do all that, I want to just take everybody off mute so that we can say hello to each other around the country. It's going to get really loud in just a moment, but I would like to just unmute all of you folks, and we're just going to say a big hello, hi, for building this revolution. All right, Josh, are we ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Hello. That was awesome. There's so many of you on this call. It's really incredible. I'm seeing some familiar names, but just a true testament to the energy in the room and the political moment that we're in. So I'm just going to walk us through the agenda very quickly for what to expect from this call. We're going to hear from Shannon Jackson. He's the executive director of Our Revolution, the new organization launched by Bernie Sanders, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the political moment that we're in. We're going to hear from Camila Jayapal from Washington State, the congressional candidate who just had some major wins in her primary on Tuesday of last week. We're going to dig in more with Mary Shimmer, Mondell Robinson, and Brianna Fisher on the principles of leadership development, and specifically more on the skills of one-on-one meetings and how to build power in that way. With Alejandro Chavez's leadership, we're going to break out also into small groups at different points throughout this conversation to dig in and discuss. And then we'll wrap up and talk about some next steps. So that's what's what you should expect. This conversation will last about an hour, and it should be a jam-packed and excellent time. So without further ado, I'm really overjoyed to welcome Shannon Jackson to the call, who's going to just share a little bit more about where we're at in this critical political moment. Shannon.
Hey, thanks so much, Annie. I really appreciate all that you've said so far. Hello, DFA. I'm Shannon Jackson. I am the new executive director of Our Revolution, the successor organization to Bernie 2016. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for everything you have done for the campaign. During the campaign, I had the privilege of being with the senator every day. I was with him when he did the call to your membership. I was with him when he received the news of, I believe it was 87% of you that voted to support him. And I was with him every step of the way. We went to communities from California to the banks of Maine, where DFA members would come up and tell them why they believed in him. Say, well, you've awoken a fire in me. 1, to believe back in politics. 2, to run for politics. And 3, to really do everything I can to help you, Senator, be elected as President of the United States. With your efforts and millions of people around the states, we were able to have a people-powered campaign that relied on grassroots community organizing, that was able to not only blow all previous historical campaigns out of the water, but we were able to make 75 million calls to voters. You enabled us to carry on for the year and a half that the campaign lasted, and now it's my pleasure to lead the successor organization that will use that energy to continue the fight. And we will work largely in part with our groups that are very similar, our sister organizations such as DFA, to continue to push progressive politics, to continue to identify the problems in the nation and empower progressive leaders. And that's why these calls are important. I am very, very honored to be a part of this tonight. And thank you all for taking the time out of your busy lives to listen, to be a part of these calls. We need people like you to not just run for office, but to push the issues that matter in this country. As Annie mentioned, on August 24th, we will be launching our organization. Our Revolution is going to be another resource and the fighting force that empowers local leaders and enables them to have the confidence and the inspiration to run for office, to fight for single payer, to stop the PPP, to run on the issues that truly matter in this nation for all people in the United States. We are also going to be doing educational campaigns and shedding light on issues that aren't covered by the local media. On August 24th at 8:30, the Senator will address the nation, and we are organizing right now house parties from coast to coast, and I would love it if you could organize them in your community. Please go to www.ourrevolution.com to sign up for how you can be involved, to stay involved, and to learn about further campaigns and the marching orders that the Senator will display upon our launch on the 24th. Before I turn it back to Annie, I just want to reiterate my thanks to you all. This campaign, as Bernie has always said, is not about Bernie Sanders. It is about the people. While campaigns end on Election Day, the revolution will carry on, and it's up to us to do so. So I thank you for letting me join you tonight. I look forward to speaking and working with many of you in the future, and I'll turn it back to Annie. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you here and to get to work with you. It's now my deep honor to introduce Camila Jayapal to the call. We have her on the line, and she's an expert in building winning grassroots people-powered campaigns because she just had some major victories in her primary for Washington Congressional District last week. Without further ado, the Bernie Sanders endorsed, Democracy for America endorsed super champion who has dedicated her entire career to building people-powered campaigns and winning. I'm pleased to introduce Camila Jayapal to the call. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Annie, for having me on. And hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I'm on a street corner, so there's a little bit of background noise, but I am so excited to be with you all because, as Annie said, for me, this is how we make change happen. I've been a community organizer my whole life. Many of you actually made calls for me through the Bernie Sanders line, through Democracy for America. But our campaign was won through a field strategy. We had over 1,000 volunteers. We knocked on over 70,000 doors, and we made over 210,000 phone calls. Plus, I know that the Bernie Sanders campaign also made over 140,000 phone calls. So if you were on one of those calls or out there working for our campaign here in Washington State to send a bold, progressive woman of color to the United States Congress, thank you so much. We ended up our primary night with an incredible victory. We were at 42% of the vote in a 9-way primary, and our closest competitor was at 21%. And to me, it's because we articulated in this campaign what working people across the United States have been feeling, what Bernie Sanders has been talking about, what Democracy for America has been talking about, which is that we need to have a strong champion for working people in the United States Congress. We need to take on the 1% and corporate influence in politics, money in politics. And my work has really been, I came to this country as an immigrant when I was 16 by myself. My parents had about $5,000 in their bank account. They used the whole thing to send me here, and I spent 25 years of my life organizing, first around immigration reform, taking on the Bush administration around illegal deportations and successfully suing the Bush administration, fighting to, I was on the committee that raised the minimum wage to $15 here in Seattle, increasing voter registration across our state. And for me, I think that the time has more than come for us to make sure that people that we send to Congress are really going to continue to fight for all these issues that put money in working people's pockets, that take on corporate influence and corporate power, but that do all of that, but take on, student debt and making sure that community college is free, or that higher education is free for everybody, but do all of that through engaging people. And that's why your participation on this call is so important, because I don't believe that change happens when you elect one person. I've said, as Bernie said, my slogan has been, this campaign is not about electing me, it's about electing we. It's about electing our voice into the United States Congress. And so I've seen it in my own campaign. We had over 1,000 volunteers on our campaign, many people who had never been involved in democracy before. But the thing is that democracy is really just bringing your passion and your energy to bear and telling people why you believe what you believe, and then organizing more people to do what you're doing. And in the core sense, that's how you break it down. That's what Bernie was doing, and I was incredibly thrilled to get Bernie's endorsement. I have been talking to the senator, and I know that our race is going to continue to be a priority race for our revolution, and I'm thrilled about that. And so we do have to win in the general election, and we're going to need every single piece of help that we can get. We feel like this race is a battleground race for our revolution, for our political revolution. We've got to win this one. We can't let it go to an establishment Democrat, and we've got to make sure that we're really putting somebody who's going to fight to make real change happen in Congress. So I'm incredibly grateful to Democracy for America for long-standing work on these issues, really building the movement, training people to be involved, giving the resources to candidates like me, coming in early with your endorsement. And I'm incredibly grateful to every single one of you that are on the phone, because it is your energy that fuels our campaigns and fuels any kind of progressive change that's going to be made in this country. So thank you all so much. I hope to see you out here in Washington or with us on the phones as we make sure we win our election and elect a number of other strong progressives across the country like Zephyr Teachout and others into the United States Congress, so that we can really make sure that it's working together and we can really build our revolution together. Back to you, Annie.
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic. Camila, thank you so much for that. It is an honor and a joy to get to keep working with you. With that, we are going to get started with our the meat of our training program. We're going to actually dig in more to the skills of building a political revolution through leadership development and grassroots organizing. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Mary Shimmer, our organizing director here at Democracy for America, who's going to talk a little bit more about how to practically do this work. Mary, take it away.
Okay. Can folks hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent. Great. So let's go ahead and switch to the next slide. And I am excited to talk with you all about one of my most favorite parts of organizing, which is volunteer engagement. Thank you. So basically, to start with the sort of obvious truth, volunteer leaders are the difference between running a campaign and building an actual movement. When we hand off campaign realms to passionate volunteer experts, we make space in our campaigns for innovation, for collaboration, and for a greater impact. And when I say engagement-based organizing, what I mean is moving beyond just recruiting and mobilizing volunteers, although that's totally necessary and a big part of what we do. But with engagement, we want to connect with volunteers as people. We want to keep them engaged in the long term and develop them into leaders for the campaign and the community. So the most essential piece of this is getting an early start. It's absolutely essential to effective engagement-based organizing, especially when you are running a progressive challenger campaign. So if you are a grassroots candidate for city council, you may never have the resources to hire paid staff, and that's okay, but you want to give yourself the lead time to find talented volunteers, to train the awesome people who walk in and can build skills, and to get people in the door early, to build credibility and energy for your candidacy, to have long-term volunteer leaders who really take ownership over the campaign, who really know their realms and skills, and successfully build the grassroots network that you need to win. So
how do I do that to people's cameras?
Ali, you're coming
Josh,
through on the
how do I do
main
that?
line.
All right.
Sorry, folks. So let's see. So that's the why. Getting people in early is going to give you a lot more power. In terms of the how, the first place you want to start is with this chart that we're showing you here. You want to create an intentional plan for your volunteers well before you need them or start recruiting them. So what you'll want to consider here is how folks will be recruited. Where will you find your volunteers? How will they find out about your campaign and candidacy? What information will they need to get excited about the volunteer opportunity? Second, consider the tasks and roles for which volunteers will be responsible. So are there parts of your campaign that you would completely hand over to volunteer leaders? And what leadership opportunities will you make available for folks? Third, consider what the volunteer experience will be. That means, what do you want the campaign to feel like to people who are coming in for the first time? And think through every step of the volunteer's experience, from learning about the campaign and being invited to volunteer, to how they're debriefed and what opportunities they'll have to give feedback, and when they'll be trained and what skills they'll develop. Finally, for your plan, think through how volunteers will be managed. So who's going to be bottom line responsible for executing the plan that you've developed, and what are the levels of leadership and management that you'll need to create in order to support all these volunteers. So once you've created your plan for volunteers, you want to move on to the next slide and start thinking about base building. I'm just waiting for that to pop up. Folks seeing a base building slide? There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much. So 4 main principles to base building. Obviously, identifying this volunteer base is going to be critical. But the first thing you want to do is actually start close to home. As organizers, it's easy to get caught up in creating a stellar outreach plan that touches all corners of the community, but really you want to ask the people closest to you to get involved first. Your partner and family and friends and neighbors, they know you, they share your values, they believe in your leadership, and they will be so excited to be asked to get involved. So build your core volunteer team from the people closest to you. And then cast a wide net in your community. Think through the networks and the ways people are already organizing themselves. So labor unions, places of worship, college campuses, alumni organizations, DFA groups in your community. Use the networks that already exist to get the word out. Don't reinvent the wheel. Third, be opportunistic. And by that I mean always be recruiting and be open to people coming in to volunteer through methods that you may not have expected. So not everyone will get an email from a listserv. You might find an awesome volunteer standing in line at the grocery store, sitting in a coffee shop, or in the parking lot as you're dropping off your kids at school. So if someone seems excited and enthusiastic as you're talking to them, make the ask. The worst they can say is no, and the best that can happen is that they turn into a great volunteer leader. And finally, remember that the volunteers that you already have will be your best recruiters. So set up challenges for people to bring a friend, reward them for bringing in the most friends and family members to different events, but really set up that atmosphere of constant recruitment, not just for you, but for everyone in your campaign. So let's move to the next slide. And once you've built an awesome and passionate base of people, you're going to want to figure out how to keep them involved for the long term and how to develop their leadership. So this next slide is going to show us some of the reasons that people might volunteer. And I want to emphasize that none of these reasons are going to be better or more legit than any others, but we do want to consider all of them when we're thinking about why people are getting involved. So Josh, can you skip me to the next slide, please? All right. When we get there, you'll see a bunch of reasons that people might volunteer. And as you're thinking through your plan and what the volunteer experience will be, you want to consider all of the reasons and how we're going to speak to the needs that people have. So if someone is volunteering because they're looking for opportunities to socialize, you want to make sure that volunteer opportunities are fun, create space for people to connect and build community and keep them happy. Some volunteers might show up because they're really motivated by the candidate. They really believe in the person and the message and their leadership. So make sure that volunteers get regular updates about what the candidate is doing and how their work is connecting to the work that the candidate is also doing, and how it all comes together to get this person into office. Some of your volunteers will be motivated by recognition. And in that case, you want to have benchmarks and opportunities for people to have their achievements recognized, their contributions celebrated, so that those people who are looking for recognition get those opportunities. Second, in this area is thinking about how we're developing our volunteers. So creating a path and a plan for volunteers. Excellent, thank you. And we can actually move to the next slide here. Creating a path and a plan for volunteers, thank you. Something that you might hear called a leadership ladder or a ladder of engagement is going to be super helpful to keeping people involved in the long term. So here you see a pretty simple illustration of how a person might move up these steps and become a more involved volunteer and build up their leadership, take on new tasks and new roles. The one thing I want to emphasize here is that leadership development isn't one size fits all. So you don't want to try to turn your best data entry volunteer into a Canvas leader, for example. It won't be the right fit for a lot of reasons. Also, kind of the flip side of that, if someone comes in the door with training experience through their work or in other areas of their life, they don't have to start at the bottom of the leadership ladder. They could start in a training position. So have multiple entry points and lots of opportunities for people to take on new leadership. So at this point, we want to take a couple minutes to give you all an opportunity to talk to each other, to meet some folks who are on the call, and introduce yourselves to each other, and then a couple folks can share how they've been recruited into a volunteer role and when they took on a task that was new to them as a volunteer and how that went. Thank you. And now we'll hand it to Alejandra to talk about the small group practice.
I hope I'm loud and clear. So real quick, we're going to break everyone into small groups. And we're going to take about 7 minutes for everyone to share one time when you've been recruited or one time you were asked to do something in your community or something to be active. And we may not get a chance for everyone to go, but don't worry. At the end of the call, we're going to put you all back in the same groups so you can talk a little bit more. You can even share some contact information if you really connect with somebody and want to continue to have a conversation. And the last thing I will add is if you are not a trainer, if you could turn off the screen. With a lot of people on, it can be a little bit more distracting. Okay, so in just a second, we are all going to go into breakout groups, and you should take some time to, excuse me, to share a story. Not everyone will get to go, but I promise you we're going to break you all back into groups later on. So on the count of 3, I'm going to put us all in our rooms. 1, 2, and 3.
Please bring your conversation to a close. This breakout session is now ending.
Hello, everyone. This is Alejandro. We are finished that section. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Mari. Are you there, Mari? From Mary?
I'm here. And just a reminder to folks to please mute your microphones if you can. We're getting some feedback and background noise on the line. So I'm going to just wait 1 second here for folks to mute if they haven't yet. Awesome. Thank you all. Fantastic. So the last 2 points that I wanted to cover as we're talking about what our campaign atmosphere feels like and how we create these long-term volunteers and develop their leadership is to really make a commitment to yourself and to your volunteers to have a culture of constant recruitment and leadership development and to establish that early on. I think it's key to keeping people in the long term when you're trying to build a connection with them and prioritize that. But as we move forward towards more challenges, less bandwidth, election day looming, we often have things like that fall by the wayside. So a few simple things that you can include to make the culture constantly feel welcoming is things like always have introductions and icebreakers at every volunteer training. Have a greeter to welcome people at every single event, and always make time to debrief with your volunteers, find out about their experience and give them an opportunity to give feedback, but also to personally thank them and invite them back for another volunteer shift. And if we skip to the next slide, we can talk about the key piece to bringing all of this together, which is to have a core of volunteer or staff leaders who own specific realms of the campaign, who are managing the work and the volunteers and their development, and who are working closely together, collaborating, and know where their roles stop and start and how to work together. They also need to be really authorized to own their realms and make decisions on their own so that you can focus on other things. So if we could skip to the last slide, just to review what we need to know. As we're engaging our volunteers, we are starting early, creating that intentional plan and really well thought out, building that base, developing leaders from within it, maintaining that ongoing culture of recruitment and development, and relying on a strong leadership team to pull it all together. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Mondell Robinson and Brianna Fisher to talk about the relationship building that makes all this work.
Thank you so much. I want to start out by saying good evening to everyone. And also, I want to do a mic check to make sure everyone can hear me. Allie, if you can hear me, can you give me a thumbs up? Awesome. Great. So I do want to start by reminding people that this is what democracy looks like. So all of the hiccups and everything that's happening with the technology, just know that it happens, but we keep it moving because we have to. What I'm going to talk about this evening, I'm going to talk about one-on-ones, which sounds like some kind of algebra problem, but I promise you it's not. Basically, one-on-ones are at the essential core of what it means to organize. Organizing is all about relationships, and relationships have always been central to organizing. Great organizers don't base their movements on happenstance, but they nurture the movement and make sure that it grows out of transformative relationships with people. Doing community organizing has forever followed the organizing practice of relational one-on-ones. A one-on-one is a natural but uncommon conversation about values, motivation, and life stories. It's a space created, it's a created space where the legitimacy and rapport begins and the foundation is set to build a deep relationship. These individual meetings are a crucial part to organizing or any organizer's toolkit. So building solid one-on-one skills is a great place to start. Plus, they're a perfect tool for recruiting people. And I think Bree, my counterpart, is going to actually tell us a story where this happened. Bree?
All right. Thanks so much, Mondo. And I am so excited to have everyone here. There's so many people on this call that it is amazing to see everyone willing to advance the political revolution. And as Mondell said, one-on-one is really a natural but uncommon conversation. And if you live in Texas or you live in the South, you know that being a progressive is very uncommon. So when you meet someone that is a progressive, you kind of get excited. And that's what happened to me one time as I was in a campaign politics class. We were asking questions, and I noticed another girl in the room just kind of drew me into her based on her questions and just how insightful she was. So after class, we talked a little bit about why we chose that as our major. And, I asked her if she was working on any campaigns at the time. And she said no, which to me is kind of unusual because there's not a lot of us, and we need to keep building that progressive movement and work together. So after class, we talked for a little while longer, and we agreed to meet the next day and just kind of hang out. During our meeting the next day, I asked her, why don't you just come join me for a phone bank with the campaign that I'm working on? So that weekend, she came and phone banked with us for a couple hours, and I sat her down and we talked about our shared values and everything else together. Sorry, guys. And everything else, and it was really a great conversation. And after that, I made sure that I asked her, can you please come back tomorrow? Or do you have another day that you can come back to? And it ended up that over the next few months, Kristen showed up at every phone bank, every canvas that we had, and every event throughout the entire campaign. And actually today we still have the pleasure of working together, and it's actually one of my best friends that actually grew just from a simple one-on-one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bree. That's a powerful story, and it leads right to my next point. And that point is basically a one-on-one, if I had to define it, I would define it as a purposeful conversation with an individual to learn about their concerns, interest level, and resources, and figure out how you can focus that to get commitments on specific actions that your campaign or source of cause need. Basically, one-on-ones are pretty similar to any one-on-one conversation you may have with acquaintances or strangers in our daily lives. So if you meet someone at a coffee shop or at lunch, it's the same thing. The only difference is getting commitments for specific action. Which lends the conversation to a more specific focus than a regular getting to know you conversation. So you as the organizer, you're responsible for creating this focus by setting a pre-arranged meeting time, having a clear goal and specific questions in mind, and also keeping a professional goal-oriented tone throughout the meeting. To do this, there are 6 model steps that you should be using to make this happen. Of course, there's no framework or exact way how to have your one-on-one. You don't want to be a robot, but if you follow these 6 steps, you're definitely on a track to being successful. And those steps are being prepared, being confident in you and the campaign, listening, agitating, getting the commitment, and then follow up. And by being prepared, what I basically mean is make sure that you're ready to explain who you are and what you are trying to accomplish. And also you need to refresh your memory with some things about this person that you're about to meet. If it's this person's interests, their experience, activities, something about their family, etc. So as when you meet this person, you're not completely blindsided by things that may come up in the conversation. It also makes the conversation easier. Like we said, this is a natural conversation. This is a natural conversation, so you don't want to just jump in and start asking for things without spending time building the proper amount of rapport where you can at least have a simple icebreaker to do that. Make sure you're also building confidence in your campaign and in yourself, and you do this by sharing a little bit about yourself, particularly points about that connect you and the other person. If you know people that this person knows, if you've been places they've been, if you have experiences that are similar or you guys share interests, this is a great place to start. Also, don't be afraid to name drop. In one-on-one, mentioning other people lends credence to your organization and also the work, especially if that person or the organization that they may be a part of is already a part of your cause. So tell them about that. And then also tell them about your accomplishment as an organization. People like to be a part of things that are moving and also winning. Now, what's important also is that you're listening. One-on-ones, they should be about 80-20. That's 80% of you listening and 20% of you talking. So you want to get to know this person to set the foundation for a long-term relationship and to begin imagining how their unique interests and talents might add to your efforts or your campaign or your cause. So listen to understand what issues and topics are important to this person. And also listen for any special skills, useful contacts, and organizational networks that they may have or mention. But don't let us confuse the word relationship with any other relationship, a normal relationship, because we're not trying to build relationships for the sake of adding friends to our Facebook profile. We're adding interest or building friends and relationships in the interest to build a strong movement or make people strong or make organizations stronger. So while these relationships are personal, there needs to always remain a high level of professionalism and commitment to keeping those goals that are set out in the initial meeting. So agitating, a lot of the times, my friend Ali told me to mention this to you all, a lot of the times agitating has a bad connotation to it, but in this sense, agitating is not a bad thing. You want to share striking truths, not to shock someone or to be obnoxious, but to remind them that it's important that this work get done, and it only gets done by people that are not being passive about these issues. A great example of this is, say for instance, you were having a one-on-one with a person who is extremely interested in the need for democracy to be reflective, meaning those people holding office need to look like the districts that they're representing. But that same person is apprehensive about supporting your candidate. Let's say your candidate name is Sheena Mead, because Sheena Mead, your candidate, is challenging an incumbent that's also a Democrat, even though the Democrat has been endorsed by American for Prosperity and taking money from predatory lending. And he doesn't speak for the district that is 67% African-American female like Sheena is. So a great example on how to agitate in this moment would be to point out or to remind that person that your candidate is a direct representation of the district she's running in, because she's a black female, she has progressive values, and all of her donations aren't from large organizations, but small donors. And this actually is a great way to agitate, not trying to frustrate people in the conversation, but to remind them that, this work is necessary, and sometimes it requires us to do things that we wouldn't traditionally do. So that's one thing, but it also, agitating also helps us get a commitment. So it allows us to get over hurdles that aren't really hurdles. Let me say that again. Every time someone tells you no, they're not really telling you no. They're telling you they need more information. And agitating sometimes can assist you with that. So getting a commitment is our next step. Before you end your one-on-one, it is imperative that you get a commitment. Ask the person to commit to a specific action. Be very specific. So if you need people to go canvassing in your next election, which is June 27, 2037, make sure you ask for that. And when you ask for it, make sure you hold people accountable. And you can hold people accountable by following up, which is the last part of this model. Following up also gives you another time or the ability to check in with the people and also thank them for committing to assist you in your efforts. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Annie and let her take us to the next part.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Mondel, for that. So again, just to recap a few of the key things that Mondel spoke about to remember when having a powerful one-on-one relationship building conversation. We want to make sure that we're prepared. We want to build confidence in yourself, in organizing in them and their ability to step up and do this work. We want to listen to them and connect with them. We want to agitate them, because the reason that we're running for office, the reason that we're building a strong people-powered team, the reason that we need to knock on doors or run press conferences or host rallies and actions is because running for office is about the things that are making real impacts in people's lives. So actually agitate folks and remind them what we're fighting for. Get a real commitment from them, and then make sure to follow up and set them up for success. And that's how we're going to build the movement via one-on-one organizing. So this is a lot of incredibly powerful information. We are only scratching the surface of some of the deep work of leadership development and grassroots recruitment. And so I want to highlight 3 big things that we can do right now. Actually, Josh, can we move to the next slide there? I know that folks have lots of questions. Actually, let's move us back to the 6 steps and look at these. So there's 3 big things that we can do to make sure that we're continuing to move this forward. Josh, can you move us back? Great. Number 1, we are going to be continuing to dig in to the skills of one-on-ones, and folks are going to go back and be in the breakout groups that we were in just a moment, and actually dig into discussing some of these skills and the ways that they've shown up in your own organizing, and how you might be able to use these one-on-one meetings to do that kind of leadership ladder that Mary talked about, to actually welcome more people into the campaign and develop their leadership over time. So we're going to be breaking into those small groups in just a moment. I'm going to ask you to do these 3 things. Number 1, take a stab at crafting your own leadership engagement plan. That means using the kind of ladder that Mary was talking about. What will someone first do when they join your campaign? What's the next thing that you'll ask them to take on? What's the thing after that? What do they need from you as a leader to set up for success, to really own and run and deepen their skills? So that's number 1. Write out your own leadership engagement plan for key roles for the kind of campaign you want to build. You can email that plan to training@democracyforamerica.com. We can't give feedback on every single campaign plan, but we will be excited to respond to as many folks as we can and to craft that leadership engagement plan. The second thing that you can do is to join an advanced leadership development practice session. Those are happening at 4 p.m. Eastern, that's 1 p.m. Pacific time, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. And those sessions will be a chance for a smaller pool of folks to actually dig in and talk through both their leadership ladder engagement plans that you've written and drafted, and also to actually role play the one-on-ones that Monzel was talking about. So again, you can craft your own leadership engagement plan, and you can email it to training@democracyforamerica.com. Number 2, you can join an advanced leadership development practice session at 4 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, not of this week, but the next week, and actually role play more of these one-on-ones. And the last thing that you can do that I want to highlight is actually join a recruitment call block that we'll be hosting also next week for some of our key Florida candidates. We'll be launching that on Thursday to recruit Democracy for America members all over Florida to actually go and organize and fight to elect political revolutionary candidates who are running right now, like Sheena Mead that Monzel spoke about, running a state legislative race that's so important in Florida. Their election, as lots of folks know, is August 30th. There's a big primary, big Senate race, lots of House races, and lots of really important folks that are running. So actually dig in on these skills and practice recruiting Democracy for America members, progressives, to join this critical work and go step up and lead for some of these key races happening so very soon with the primary. So those are 3 big things that you can do. And I want to make sure that folks have a chance to actually talk more with each other right now. Before we do that, I'm going to take just a quick poll. So if folks are ready to write out and send in their own leadership engagement plan, just press 1 on your phone if you're ready to do that. Press 1 if you're ready to craft your own leadership ladder organizing plan. Awesome. That's great. Okay, press 2 on your phone if you are interested in digging in more on some of these one-on-one role play sessions. Press 2 on your phone if you'd like to join in and take part in some of these practice sessions to actually hear what a one-on-one meeting sounds like, some pitfalls and some tips. 2 on your phone. Cool. Cool, we're seeing a lot of folks there. Awesome. And then press 3 if you're excited to hear more about building the movement in Florida by electing political revolutionaries up and down the ballot and recruiting into days of action. press 3 on your phone. Nice. All right, well, that is amazing. I want to bring this to close by sending us all back into these small groups that you began in. And we'll be moving facilitators throughout the small groups for tips and feedback, but we're going to move back into our small groups in just a moment to talk more about how you've seen these skills work in your own organizing, because so many of you have led so many incredible things in your communities already. These skills of getting a hard commitment, these skills of agitating, and how that's shown up in your own work. And you can share contact info and say goodnight to one another. So in just a moment, we're going to move back into those small groups and dig in a little bit more into the skills that Mondell just highlighted. And again, this slide deck with some additional materials will be emailed to you after the call. We're also going to be sending over a debrief and a survey form so that we can keep growing and expanding these night schools. The response to this has been truly incredible and inspiring. Thousands of people signing up to join these calls. And that means that we're going to keep growing and building them. I know that some folks were patient with some tech challenges on the way in, so I want to thank you so much for your patience and embracing technology, because it means that you can do those 3 things: write up your own leadership engagement plan and send it in, join one of the practice lab sessions, and consider building for Florida for some of these candidates that are running right now to keep honing those skills and win some elections while we're at it. And with that, we're going to break into these small groups for us to talk a little bit more about the skills that we covered and how it's shown up in your own work, and say goodnight. Alejandro, just let us know when we're going in, and thank you so much, everybody.
Great, thank you, everybody. And everybody should be in the same groups they were in earlier. If you got dropped, you may be in a new group. So on the count of 3, everybody will be in the new group. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night. 1, 2, and